So, Randy, Justin, I'd like to ask you first off, tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like in this market. What is it that you're encountering, and how are you getting things done with what we're doing now?
So anyway, Chief Happiness Officer, to answer Paul's question first, essentially that's just me being the personal liaison between everybody in the company and acting as their ombudsman between and being the go-between between the company and you all. It's kind of almost like a patient's bill of rights. It's I'm that go-between, and sometimes I have to look back and be like, oh wait, if something's going wrong or somebody's making me angry and I just want to go off on them, I have to remind myself, I am the Chief Happiness Officer. So it's almost like a good reminder to yourself to just always wear a smile. But to answer your question, Daniel, and that is how does my day-to-day really change? And that is one of the things I try to stay on top of is prop tech, which is technology in property. And really, it used to be about ease for prop tech, ease, convenience, but now with the onset of COVID-19, and it's now more about safety and social distancing. So what we're doing in that vein is we're pushing more for RON closings, which is remote online notarizations. So that's our preference, and that's how the biggest change has affected my industry in title.
Interesting. Randy, tell us more about RON. Tell us a little bit of detail about how that works. How did it come about to be something that's even allowed to be done?
All right, so effective January 1st of 2020, the state of Florida enacted into law, along with 18 other prior states that allowed it, what's called RON legislation, which is remote online notarization. It can be found in Florida Chapter 117, Part 2. Part 1, most of you all are familiar with. That's just the regular notaries, anybody that has a stamp and to stamp the document. And there's even something that was previously on the books called electronic notarization. But that is not RON. RON is not to be confused with electronic. Yes, they're both digital, but that is not the same thing. A remote online notary is somebody who has to be separately bonded, separately insured. There's more insurance requirements, more bonding requirements, and testing. You have to pass a test as well. Now, all of that in and of itself is not the difficult part, quite frankly. The part that it does become a little bit difficult is once you get that RON notarization and you're capable of doing that, we have 3 that are certified in our office. The difficult part is you have to be associated with a platform that allows you to actually do the RON notarization. You can't just slap a signature on a PDF. There is an entire platform that has to be used, and there's only about 5 platforms in the state of Florida that permit the process to be done. Because not only do you need the entire thing to be recorded, it also has to be stored for over 10 years. It has to be done on this third-party software, and there's also something that has to be done called identity proofing. Identity proofing is when they go into your background and they ask you questions about yourself to certify that you actually are who you say you are. So it's a way of proving that the person is who they say they are, not just having them show their ID online and having that recorded, but there's an additional step as well.
Interesting. It's good to know that there's 2 different ways to do it. How immersed does a realtor need to be in this, or do they actually just need to know which of the resources or title companies that are accepting it?
Well, one of the things that I loved how Justin and I were talking and you and I were talking is that some entities will say that, no, we don't accept it. The fact of the matter is it's not that they don't accept it, because it's certainly a permissible means of signing documents in the state of Florida. And frankly, the signer could be anywhere in the world. And I even jokingly say we could do a closing for an astronaut. They could be in the out of this galaxy. It doesn't matter. As long as they have a social security number, we can do it. It doesn't matter where they are. The issue is I'm sorry. So really the question is whether or not they have the capability of doing it. That should be the question that should be asked. Do you have the capability of doing it? And realtors should be asking this question as a further option for their clients. That's how I would propose it.
This is a good dovetail to have that conversation. One of the great things about Miami is its multicultural experience and how we have such an influence globally. Miami's really come to stage and is recognized on a world level now. So we have buyers from all of South America, Central America, Europe, and around the world. What are we doing in this situation with both buyers and sellers that are out of the country? How are we managing these transactions for foreign nationals? Randy?
So the United States is part of the Hague Convention, and in 1961 there was a treaty signed, the Apostle or Apostille, as Justin likes to call it. We have a different pronunciation on that, but anyway, it's pronounced both ways. But essentially, it allows for people who are non-U.S. citizens to go to somebody who's been approved in that country and have their documents essentially notarized. And so it's that's something that certainly can be done as long as the person over in that country is authorized by that country to, in essence, notarize documents. There are some countries that are not part, and I looked at which countries were not part of the Hague Convention and that treaty. And those countries are Chile, Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, and Canada. Now that doesn't mean that that it's not possible. It's just there's just another means that for them to sign documents. Of course, you can go to an embassy, you can go to a consulate, but essentially what's going to happen is there'll be a document that is signed called the document itself is actually going to state on it pursuant to the Hague Convention, and it'll be in French in 1961. It'll be titled Apostille. It'll have a bunch of line items that are filled out as far as who's signing, what their authority was. And then it'll be translated and it'll be sent over to us, and that'll be something that we can use as sacrosanct.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. There's a big misconception about apostilles or apostillas, as they're pronounced in Spanish.
And there's a third way.
And now that I would say, there's the third one.
There's a misconception it can only be done in embassies. But realistically, there's actually services that are provided to help expedite these. And in fact, as I understand it in the United States, we have 50 different ones because each state has its own proper apostille. We recently actually did one in Canvas, a project we represent in downtown Miami, where it's a completed project, and we use the apostille process to get the documents certified. So it's great that we're bringing this up because I think it's a little known concept, and there's a lot of confusion with it, and it doesn't only have to be done in embassies. So there's many ways to get it done. You can Google it, but it's a great workaround to deal with the foreign national. Justin, give us a little bit of insight on the details on lending options. How is it working out right now under these circumstances? You know, different platforms, different products that are out there for both local and international.
Yeah. So
Randy, I wanted to bring you back and ask you a question about, you know, what challenges are you seeing in this right now? What are your obstacles?
All right. So since we're talking specifically about changes ever since COVID-19, I'm really talking more about ever since then. So ever since the implementation of the virtual closings, one of the challenges is, as we said before, first of all, the person, if we're going to be doing a virtual closing, as opposed to a mail away or doing what we said with the foreign nationals going to an embassy which are closed, or an ambassador or something like that, if we're going to do it virtually, one of the hiccups is first of all, does the person have do they have a social security number? And tied with that question is does your lender permit it? So if this is a cash deal, no problem. We don't have to ask anybody's permission. Those things are simple as pie. We tag up the document, everything is done virtually. The only additional questions are, and this is ironic, but we actually had somebody show up expecting to do a virtual online closing, and they said, I don't have a laptop. We also had somebody show up to do a virtual closing, and then we forgot to ask, oh, hey, by the way, do you even have a web camera? Then we had somebody show up, and then there was no audio. So it's like, you know, my parents, they used to run a service contracting business, and as part of the interview process, one of the questions they would ask, the people who they were interviewing, who would be taking the phone calls, was if somebody calls up and they say my lamp isn't working, what's the first question you ask? Is it plugged in? Did you turn the light bulb? I mean, I have to go back. I'm no longer in the title insurance business. I am no longer in the hospitality business. We are now in the tech support business. And I got to tell you, I have a whole new respect for our IT department, and I just now deserve a Nobel Peace Prize for patience, because that is what we have to have now. It is a different industry than it used to be. But when it works for the signer, oh my God, it is a blessing, because it can happen so fast. They can hit one button and click and have everything signed. So it's wonderful.
That's great. That's great, Randy. But you come off like such a patient person. We, some of the transactions we've dealt with is, if we're dealing with someone that's elderly, if we're dealing with somebody that has poor communications or technology connections. So it's interesting, because this has really thrust a lot of people into having to use tech, and even if they used it before at a 10%, they're having to use it now at 110%. And so it's for us that are doing it on a day-to-day, you're required to get it all together. But for somebody to do a single transaction, it might be a few more hoops, especially even though it's maybe the most important transaction that they're doing. Absolutely. And some of what we've been able to do is really get others involved and kind of everyone involved with the transaction be more vested with it, to help those individuals that need a little bit more assistance to get it over the hurdle. So let's talk about some positives. Randy, what do you see that's different? What do you see that's working better for us? I'll give you an example. We're actually noticing that some things are running more efficient. Some things are functioning better, and I think we're going to see legacy procedures that came from this process that we're going through now that are going to stick with us for the future and a long time, because we find it to work better. What are you seeing, Randy?
So one thing that I see out in the field is and I think this was actually started by the inspectors for the building departments that are allowing inspections to approve permits to be closed out from building departments by simply doing a walkthrough with then showing a video camera. I see that realtors are doing that as well with walkthroughs, so that for their clients, and they're selling properties that way, and they're also doing their final walkthroughs and their inspections and their due diligence. So I think that's number one, becoming more efficient, and it's also become a game changer. Whereas before it was like that was kind of almost unthinkable, or maybe only for international clients. Now it's becoming something of a more generally accepted practice. Sometimes it just has to do with the culture and what we're willing to accept. It's not like the technology didn't completely exist or that was completely foreign. It's just that we are more accepting of it now. The other thing that I think that's become more efficient is that instead of having to DHL or FedEx documents, we've kind of exchanged one cost for another. So for instance, doing these remote closings, it has a hard cost for us. Every closing we do actually costs us money, and that we have to pay to that platform. So, but in exchange for that, we're saving, however, on the DHL and the FedEx, because now I called up and I spoke to the Broward County Properties Appraiser's office, because my concern was after we did these digital closings, that's great, this whole thing came into effect, Chapter 117, Part 2, we can do these digital closings, yay. But so what? What if the recording office doesn't accept these documents? Because it used to be that if they didn't have a wet signature, goodbye, they're not recording it. So now I had a conversation with them. They turned me on to a statute. I forgot what it was. It was like 693.04 or something like that. It was a recording statute. And I think it was subsection, it was all the way at the bottom. And they added this provision on that said, as long as the document is notarized in conformance with the notarial section for RONs, that separate part, that Part 2, then they'll record it. So I don't see really much of an impediment other than just the technology itself. And of course, we wound up, Ron was coming, but now it's like we just got forced into it. So it's like there are a little bit of glitches, and sometimes it comes into beta testing, and people have been really good. They've been patient, but we just have to set the stage and advise them of what their expectations are beforehand, so people don't get frustrated, because that's always the concern with technology. So I think that has been more efficient. And the other thing, like I said, that's really awesome is that somebody has a 104-page document and you have to have it signed by the borrower as well as the co-borrower. Well, now you have the ability to click once and your signature is filled in everywhere. That doesn't mean you're not going to review your documents. Well, that's up to them if they're going to review it or not. But I mean, they have to click a document, a button that says that they've reviewed the document, but they have the ability as well to just simply click once and then their signature is filled in everywhere. That's pretty awesome. I mean, how much more efficient can you get than that? So that's what I love, and that's the great part about it.
So to your point, the third-party inspections on construction is something that we as a company and our clients that we represent as developers have been leveraging substantially. It's definitely facilitated the construction project has proceed, and that is very important. And I agree. I think we're going to see some of these long-lasting changes. I think it's also important to comment, that right now, one of the reasons, like you mentioned, that Ron's just coming in and this virtual notary process is just starting. This was a lobbying effort that had happened for many years with Miami Realtors and Florida Realtors going to Tallahassee and pressing this issue to get this done. And fortunately, last year we were able to get this legislation established and passed to where it became effective now in January. So it is fresh, it is new to some. As you mentioned, some title companies are more prepared to roll it out. Others are catching up. Some lenders are prepared to accept the technology advances. Some are getting there, but we're going to see this become, I think, the norm. And I think everyone's going to catch up to accepting it because it is easier. It is a cost savings. It's going to be the process. And really, we need to be grateful to Miami Realtors and Florida Realtors for even having, without knowing COVID was coming, to be in this situation and have had that legislation passed last year is outstanding. So thank you to all of our staff and all of our leaders that helped with that. It's such a good fact that you brought that up, because we were talking about how this is really going to need to make realtors more professional. We're all going to need to do our jobs a little bit more diligent because these drive-by appraisals or these appraisal waivers are going to depend a lot on how well written is that listing, how detailed is it. If you have a litany of upgrades, you need to communicate that. You need to put that out there so that it gets counted. We were recently involved in several appraisal waivers, some that went smoothly and some that underappraised. And the argument was, well, if they never saw it, how do they know all the great things that are inside the property? And the answer to that is, as realtors, we need to provide that information more readily to the appraiser, have that in the listing to better serve our clients and get that appraisal done. Because they won't have another way of doing it. And I agree with you. I think we're going to see this become a bit more of a norm. So that's shaping the business in a more professional manner going forward, for sure. You're not going to see single picture listings anymore for a bit, I bet.
May I ask a question, Justin?
Yeah.
I thought I heard about something that may be coming out, which was that there was a push. Now, I don't know if it ever happened, but if a property was under a certain price, then rather than have a certified appraiser, they could, what could be done is something online. In other words, like, I hate to say Zillow, but I don't know.
So they have what is considered like a desk review, or it's an automated value model, which it's an AVM appraisal. So that really is technically kind of what's being implemented, right? So when we do appraisal waivers, we're taking some version of that model. Whether it's, people say, hey, my credit report shows this credit score, but you went and pulled it and it says something else. Well, that something else was trying to mimic what is the FICO scoring model, but isn't perfect. Our version is we're actually taking the consumer data that has been delivered to Fannie Mae in previous transactions based on a certain time period, and we are using that information to create that AVM model. So essentially, that has been adopted, from that approach. Sometimes we may find it.
And for that, is there a certain price point for that,
No, actually, the reality is that it's much more aggressive than setting a hard LTV. So if you said, I'm putting 50% down, and the property value is this, if you only say that, then that means everything above that you would need an appraisal for. Well, we'll actually, and often in many cases, get a waiver much higher from a loan to value standpoint, depending on how that property was ultimately priced or where it is from an LTV standpoint in the refinance transaction.
And the challenges with the AVMs is that it's really an algorithm, and it's not a person that's physically been in your home or on that block. So block to block, things may change. Homes may be very different, not only from the finishes, but even how they sit on the property, and that is an effect. So we'll see those AVMs getting tweaked and polished. I mean, Zillow's been going through it for a while. The CEO of Zillow's home actually was off by 40%.
I didn't know that. That's a good one.
Yeah, so AVMs are a little bit challenged, but we're definitely going to see them evolve. I do think that it is going to be paramount that both the seller as well as the agent representing the seller be able to provide more and more detail going forward.
Did the CEO of Zillow estimate his house too high and then go for a loan application to do a cash out refi with Justin? I get it. I really get it. If I could write my own appraisal, I would do that too.
So I want to get one last question into Randy. Randy, when we're talking about this remote process, and whether it's a foreign national or not, how much of a difference is there if the person that is not available to be physically there, be it a seller or a buyer? Is there a lot of difference? And the reason I asked the question is we did have a situation where we were told that because the buyer was out of the country and a deed needed to be signed, they would not accept a virtual process. And tell us a little bit about that and what are the workarounds?
The buyer was out of the country?
The seller was out of the country.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense as to who would sign the deed.
I apologize.
Okay, so seller was out of the country, and who would not accept the deed being signed?
Title insurance.
Again, as long as it's done via
I had a social security number, then it should qualify as a RON qualified transaction, right?
So I just don't think they knew what they were talking about. But
it sounds more like the title company wasn't RON ready.
You should have had them go back to their underwriter, and I mean, if somebody pointed that out to them, then they'd say, "Yeah, I guess we got to take it."
Yeah, I think it goes to the point which is, just like not all realtors are created equal, not all title companies are created equal. Sometimes people just don't want to put the work in or don't want to put in the extra efforts of the understanding. Same thing goes in the lending side of our businesses. So again, you got to work with those that are solution oriented, that want to go to work, and come up with the alternatives and the solutions and also learn along the way, right? I mean, you got to be adaptable.
Sure.
That's great. Are there any more questions? Or I know they were pretty thorough and pretty much answered everything. I know, Daniel, you've been closing a lot of deals and your office has been closing deals. Do you have any final thoughts on what you're seeing and an uptick in the past week or two? Are people getting more bullish, or what do you see?
So I would say over the last 14 to 20 days, we've actually seen more showing requests. We've seen more offers. We've actually negotiated some contracts. We conducted some inspections yesterday. We've done about 80 closings in 5350 Park in downtown Doral. We've had several closings at Canvas as of late as well. And we've done about 90 or so closings at Ritz-Carlton Sunny Isles. So those are the projects that we have that are in the closing process now. The others are in development or construction or sales. We've had pre-sales. We did a couple of great sales in Missoni in Brazil. We had 2 sales in Una, which were also very nice, and we'll be providing more details about those. We've also conducted closings in Flatiron. I forgot. We're finishing closings out there. We had started that just before COVID, and there's a few that are still happening now towards the end. So I think the important thing to communicate is to our members is stay relevant, stay in front of your clients, stay in front of your contacts, communicate with your lenders, reach out to Justin, find the right title company, talk to Randy. There's resources that are helping transactions be done. Yes, we all agree volume is down, but be part of the volume that is happening. Get out there and be relevant and make sure you're part of what's happening today.
Yeah.
We'll send everybody a copy of this, a link to this recording, and then all the speakers' information if you do want to reach out to somebody. I should, if I can't get it done today because it doesn't download properly, I promise you by the end of tomorrow, I'll give you a link to this and then the information of the speakers. And also put on a link to the virtual open houses too. Daniel, you want to send everybody out?
If you want.
I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank the viewers. I want to thank the Miami Realtor Association for putting this together. I think we provided a lot of great contact. Randy, you were Randy, you were excellent. Justin, you were excellent. Paul, thank you very much. Thank you again to all the viewers. And any questions you guys have, please feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Always fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate you having me.
And
Happy Cinco de Mayo. Go tequila.
If anyone has any questions, they can reach out directly to the speakers. I promise I'll send everything.
I will be at Rocco's Tacos picking up my delivery.